On today's edition of the show, the Florida Panthers make it interesting against the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 82, but come up just short. We're going to discuss what Matthew Caldwell said to the media during the first intermission, and we're going to preview the first-round series between the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, April 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're at your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also follow us on Instagram as well at LO_FLA Panthers. Subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. So the Florida Panthers, they start off a little slow. They fall behind early into the first period and go down by 2 goals by the end of period number 2. And then what's interesting for this one is that the first 2 period had a combined 2 goals, while the third period was a little interesting where there was 8 goals scored in the third period to make it a final score of 6-4. The Panthers cut it close to at least 1 towards the end, but it wasn't good enough for the Florida Panthers to defeat the Carolina Hurricanes. So it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, which means Nick Fairbanks is back here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, and I'm just glad we don't have to talk about like a clinching or, that the Panthers couldn't do it in the last 2 games. So happy to be back and happy to be talking about a series that's coming up next week.
Yeah, and when you it's funny because my attention, of course, with the Pittsburgh Penguins not being eliminated, with the Pittsburgh Penguins being eliminated on Tuesday, my attention was not even on Columbus and Pittsburgh tonight, and they ended up losing in overtime. So don't know how that game ends up being if they hadn't lost to Chicago, but maybe their approach is a little different. Maybe they don't lose in overtime, but count our lucky stars with, of course, what happened on Tuesday for Pittsburgh, Chicago, but for this game here and for the season, we were talking about 96 points as the benchmark to get to for this team, and it ended up being 92. That was the minimum for the season for the Panthers to get into the dance. But for this one, it was slow from the start. Just before I could even tweet out saying it's game time in Sunrise, Brandon Montour goes to the box for tripping. But listen, I know the Panthers gave up 6 goals, of course, 2 of them being empty netters to Carolina, but I was very impressed by Alex Lyon in this one because I thought the Carolina Hurricanes really did a great job getting into the low slot areas, and the Panthers were having a hard time retrieving pucks as well, especially off of rebounds. And I thought Alex Lyon, he was very well set, especially getting into the butterfly position, especially on redirections and all. And some of the goals that Brett Burns scored, lots of traffic in front as well. So I think, of course, Alex Lyon is the game 1 starter if game 1 is tomorrow. But I think it was just a matter of a few lapses in this game that really, really cost the Panthers this one.
Yeah, and kind of, go back to, what went on with Pittsburgh. To compare them to Florida this season, probably the most inconsistent teams, and one of them just decided to get hot at the right time.
Yes.
So that's why Florida's in. Secondly, tonight, I'm not blaming anything on Alex Lyon either. I just think that the Hurricanes know how to forecheck. That's their coup de grace. That's what they do very well. They have a strong defensive core that they have. And, they're number one in the league for scoring goals by defensemen. They have guys that can shoot it. So it's not a big surprise to see what happened tonight, but kind of glad that we're going to not be hopefully seeing them, in the playoffs this year. But just another maybe wake-up call for this team. Like, hey, maybe don't come into this game lulled or like a zombie and wake up during the third period.
Yeah, and a lot of times we saw the Florida Panthers misconnecting on attempts, like even early in the first period, Carter Verhaeghe tried to wrap around attempt to get it to Sam Reinhart and just was unable to connect. I mean, the Florida Panthers, they didn't even get their second shot on goal until 10 minutes into the first period. I mean, there was also a centering feed by Alexander Barkov trying to get it to Sam Reinhart right in front, and then Freddie Anderson was just right there to cut off that one. But really, for this game, it really changed. It really changed in the middle of actually right after the Florida Panthers tied this game at 2 at 3:33 into the game. The Florida Panthers scored 2 goals in a 2-minute and 19-second span, and the trip that wasn't called from I believe it was Shane Gostisbehere as Matthew Tkachuk gets the puck, tries to go on a breakaway. I didn't have the best angle from what I had on in the press box, but I thought that Matthew Tkachuk was tripped. But look what happens just a few minutes later. The Carolina Hurricanes scored 2 goals in checks notes 21 seconds. So just a weird third period that you had 2 goals in the first 2 periods and then that 2-minute span and then a 21-second span in this one.
Kind of goes to show, what calls can be called or what calls cannot be called that can change the, dynamic of a game. Now, I almost wonder if they're giving Gostisbehere the benefit of the doubt because Tkachuk is who Tkachuk is, But at the same time, you would hope that, referees are, transparent and that they try to call the game as even as possible. But unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. And, Florida got burned by it. What can we say? I think it was happening a lot in the beginning of the season where they would give up a goal or they would score a goal and then immediately right after that, they would give up a goal. So definitely something that they need to, really hone in on right there and just make sure that, after something like that happens, that they kind of settle down and take over the play again, or at least do the things that they know that will prevent, a goal being scored against them. That's forechecking, that's controlling the neutral zone, things like that.
And when speaking of the neutral zone, Panthers had 16 giveaways on the night, and I saw a lot of them in the neutral zone as well. A little careless for them. But one guy that I was really impressed by, and this was before his goal even happened in the third period. It was really in the second period where Ryan Lomberg gets a stretch pass to Alexander Barkov in the neutral zone, and then Alexander Barkov, it looked like he was going to take it by himself, but that passing lane to Sam Reinhart closed a little bit. I'm like, gotta shoot there in that instance for Alexander Barkov. That was in the middle of the second period as well for the Panthers, but it was all silliness as well and some mental errors too, like Tkachuk's cross check, which was way away from the play too. It's just these mental errors just can't happen in the playoffs. They just can't.
No, and I think, we've seen it all season long where they will take stupid penalties at really bad times. I can probably name a couple of times that Aaron Ekblad, with the final minute of play, would take a cross-checking penalty, or he'll take a tripping penalty when the game has maybe a goal or 2 in hand, and it might cause a tie-up or they end up losing the game. So I hope now that the regular season's over and it doesn't matter anymore, that they're not going to be taking stupid penalties anymore. But you know what? History does kind of repeat itself. So, hopefully it won't damage us too much, because Boston hasn't been really good on the power play for, the second half of the season, even though recently they've been better. Let's just hope that they continue to be cold.
Yeah. And Yeah, that's what we could only hope here for the Panthers. How impressed were you by Radko Gudas stripping Freddie Anderson, which made it 2-2 at the time, and that pass from behind the net from the defenseman, and it's like, maybe he learned a little bit from Matthew Tkachuk.
He kind of does rub off on everybody, but the fact that he was able to strip Anderson and put a pass in the way he did, I don't know. Gudas, you would never think he would do that. He's always a guy that's trying to put as much muscle into his shots as possible and just trying to get it on net. But, I guess, pigs fly over they fly at some point. So, it can happen. But hopefully he'll be, his stable self for the playoffs coming up, not trying to hit everybody.
Yeah, and even one thing of note is, with it being a 6-4 final, even when it was cut down to 5-4, this game was not as close as the final score it indicated, with, of course, a comeback attempt for the Panthers, with Verhaeghe getting a goal on the Matthew Tkachuk shot attempt that was rebounded by Freddie Anderson. He gets it into the open net, and then Anthony Duclair. One positive thing that you could take is Anthony Duclair, that pass from Eric Stahl that Duclair hit on the one-timer, a confidence boost for Anthony Duclair, who had his first goal since February 28th against the Tampa Bay Lightning. That was an empty net goal. I happened to be at Amalie Arena for that one. So that was Duke's second game back when he scored that empty netter, because he returned on that Buffalo game. So a little bit of a confidence boost, and Duke was asked about it after the game, and he said it's great to get on the score sheet. So, and that hopefully he could carry over to the series against the Boston Bruins. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to talk more about what Florida Panthers president and CEO Matthew Caldwell said about the season and the Florida Panthers making the postseason. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about eBay Motors. A championship team is about each other and a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Back on this Friday, April 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. I got Nick Fairbanks here for this to talk about 6-4 victory for the Carolina Hurricanes, and even the New Jersey Devils were down 4-1 at one point. Came back. Luke Hughes, we were talking about pre-recording about Luke Hughes just coming out of Michigan and scoring that game winner for the New Jersey Devils in overtime, which now you're looking, if you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, you're looking at that saying, thank goodness they got that win for them, because it wasn't looking pretty. It wasn't looking good for the Devils early on. And so it's a big swing of things there. But I want to go into more of what Matthew Caldwell said to the media after during the first intermission. I got an opportunity to ask Matt about the 4 consecutive seasons. You go through 3 head coaches, a GM change, and during in the question, I said that there were 2 remaining players remaining from the bubble, but it's actually 3. So I botched that one.
It's all right.
But he said that there was a lot of turnover with this team prior to them selling it, prior to them buying it, excuse me. And that the leadership that has been applied with the coaching, himself, Vinny Viola, that they are committed to that. And he also provided an update on the War Memorial Auditorium. It is not going to be opening this summer. He said it's 90% complete, and the earliest that we could expect War Memorial to open will be the fall. So they are going to cut it a little bit close to training camp next season. So I I want to give you your thoughts on what Matthew Caldwell had to say.
Well, Matt certainly went back and talked about when, they first bought the team, Vinny Viola and Doug Sifu, and how there's a lot of turnover. And there's been a lot of turnover since they've been here. Let's not kid ourselves, okay?
Yeah.
I think the Panthers have been the most tumultuous organization, over the last 20 years. This is the first time that they've been stable as far as the team making the playoffs in 4 consecutive years. And yes, I am one of the ones that will count the play-in in the bubble. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You had to be there, and you had to at least meet that criteria to get in. So yes, I do consider it. Now, what has gone on since then till now? Some of it's been out of their hands. Okay. We can talk about Coach Q all day.
Yes.
We can talk about certain players that have been traded. I mean, I know that a lot of people were talking about Mr. Huberdeau today. And just a lot of the things that the team has been undergoing, but it's needed. It's been needed for the longest time. And now I think the organization is going to start reaping the benefits of that. So it's been a long road. It's taken them almost a decade to put this all together and kind of get to where they are now. But when it comes to the team and where they're going to be starting next season, they're going to be in a much better position to not only compete, but they're also going to have a new practice facility that's hopefully going to open up, which I'm actually looking forward to, because I play at the Ice Den right now, and that's all anybody can talk about right now is like, when is it going to open so we can go see it and go play.
Absolutely. One other thing that he spoke about is, and this was an interesting question that George Richards put up for Matthew Caldwell. The presser was 9 minutes that we spent with Matthew Caldwell. He spoke about this will be, if the Miami Heat don't win on Friday in their playing game, this will be the first time that the Florida Panthers will be in the playoffs and the Miami Heat will not be. Crazy to think. I did not know that until today. So just goes to show about the instability of this franchise prior to 2020. And he also spoke about, we don't cheer against anyone, but it's great for the spotlight to be on us. And he spoke a little bit about that they are one step closer to a naming rights deal for the arena, partnered up with Broward County, of course, because I believe if I'm not mistaken, the arena is owned by the county, not
Yes.
the team. And also contingency plans for if things end up folding with Bally Sports as well. That's a big one. They said they've talked to the Nashville Predators organization as well, and they said that they have contingency plans for Diamond Sports Group / Sinclair to find a way to put games on the air. So Panthers games on TV, and even if they have to fully go on ESPN Plus as well, we don't have to worry about there not being Panthers hockey.
And I wouldn't think so. I mean, it's one of the 4 major sports here in the United States, and we still have a ton of talent all over the world that comes here to play in the best league in the world. And there's no way that Gary Bettman was going to allow any team, especially in the Southern Belt, to not have their games televised. Now, will they be blacked out? Possibly. I mean, I've had my fair share blocked out this season, but you know what? The internet has a way. I won't tell you where, but I will say it has a way. And I will say this, that the whole thing with, Caldwell and, it being that short of a presser and everything, I think they just wanted to get this game over with. They wanted to spend some time to saying, hey, this is what we're kind of doing right now, and this is what we have an update on, but that's that. Let's move on to the playoffs. Let's really get into what we're here for. This is what NHL fans are here to watch and die for. And, I'm going to sneak this in right here. I'm happy that the Pittsburgh Penguins aren't in. I don't have to really worry about, Crosby and, Malkin and, what kind of calls they're getting, because, the last game they played Boston, I think they got a very favorable non-goaltender interference call. So, bye-bye, Crosby.
Back-to-back shows and back-to-back guests where we had someone telling us how they really feel about the Pittsburgh Penguins not making it to the dance. Also, he was asked about what Tkachuk being on this Florida Panthers team brings as far as the business side of things and the economic side of things too, that the fact that you could put more of his face around and that he's more recognizable because of that personality as well, we've talked about all off season and even during the season about that flair that he has. But Caldwell also spoke about it, how it brings more of recognition to the team too, even for casuals as well. So we are very fortunate, very, very fortunate. And I'm actually, I'm going to give you the floor real quick. I'm going to look up his point total, but what are your thoughts on how economically Tkachuk's presence just has changed now that we have completed 82 games?
His, how should I say, his stamp on this team started probably, in his presser, saying that he hates Tampa more now. I'm a big guy for that because, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and one of my favorite coaches, Lovie Smith, in his presser said that, the number one thing that we want to do outside of winning a Super Bowl is beat the Green Bay Packers. All right. So you need to take on your number one rival, and you need to beat the teams that are, quote unquote, better than you, or, they were the champs the past few seasons. So, that's something that, we're going to have to, climb that hill and eventually get over it. But the fact that he said that, and that he's, walking the walk and with his personality, when's the last time this team had somebody like that besides Luongo?
Can't think of it.
No, I mean, I can honestly probably think of the 96 team as probably the last time that this team had people who were personable or who had, not a robotic type of, relationship with, I don't want to say the fans, but even with the press and everything. So it's kind of like he brought life into the organization, and that, other people are going to see that. They're going to want to come to games, and that's going to sell more, not only in the stadium, but it's going to sell more for their businesses as well. So I hope he's here longer than 8 years,
Yes.
And hope he retires a Panther just after this one season. But, very happy he's down here and he's not elsewhere.
No doubt. And we are very fortunate to watch this guy every day. And just looked up what he finished with, 109 points. He got an assist tonight on that Verhaeghe goal that made it a game that was closer than it actually was, even though it was a short period of time where the Panthers, it might have been over. The Panthers made it close, and then the Carolina Hurricanes taking it away towards the end. But hey, it was a weird ending to a game 82, but this season has been weird for the Panthers as well, with the start, the 7-game point streak, four game losing streak, 7-game point streak again, and right before tonight. Why should we be surprised with that ending to game 82?
I was going to say, I mean, if you think the whole season was weird, wait till the playoffs start. That's when things get really weird, and our emotions are going to go like this the whole time. So
no doubt.
Get those Twitter receipts ready.
Yes, no doubt. Definitely it's going to be an exciting time now that we know who the Florida Panthers will be facing in round one. We are going to discuss who the Panthers will be facing and take a guess on how the schedule could be lining up for this series. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Friday, April 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers lose to the Carolina Hurricanes at home 6-4 and are locked in to Wild Card 2, which means they will be facing the best regular season team of all time, points wise and wins wise, in the Boston Bruins. But their turnaround with Jim Montgomery coming into the mix as well, Patrice Bergeron coming back for another season, David Krejci, and of course, so many great players to name for the Boston Bruins. I mean, Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy, Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, 60-goal scorer. So many. But the Panthers also talked about after the game how they're Matthew Tkachuk. He said, "We're not just happy to make the playoffs, and that they are going to go out there and they're going to give it their all, and that they are going to be hungry." And then Lomberg says how that everyone's going to be counting us out. Everyone's gonna think that with this best team of all time that it's gonna be smooth sailing for the Bruins. But I haven't done the research on this, but this might be the first time that the reigning President's Trophy winners are facing the current President's Trophy winners. I'm gonna have to double check on that. So, but it's gonna be a battle for in this series. But of course, one of the best games of the season for the Florida Panthers came in that January 28th matchup against the Bruins. Of course, Barkov scoring at the buzzer, and then Sam Reinhart scoring in overtime. The first one with going down to 4 defensemen at one point. The second road game, Spencer Knight not playing so well in that one, and then I think the second one was like right before Thanksgiving. Doing this on the top of my head, so 2-2 in the season series for the Panthers. Now they have an opportunity, but me watching this, of course, I'm not on the ice. I feel a little kind of not necessarily at ease, but I am watching this as they got nothing to lose. I know the players might see it a little different because, of course, what they went through from being in that position last season to this season.
So I'm going to kind of quote Biz Nasty a little bit, and I'm going to use what he said a little bit out of context because it's easy to do that. But he said he'd rather not see the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, or he would put something in a blender. So I think we should send them a blender, or at least the Boston Bruins some blenders, because I don't think any team really wants to play Florida right now. They're getting hot at the right time. They have a hot goaltender who is wearing John Van Beesbrook's jersey. And if I was looking at 95-96, one of the last team besides the Tampa Bay Lightning actually had the best record ever was the Red Wings in 95-96. Now, did they make the cup? Did they win the cup? No. I think the same thing's going to happen to Boston, and I think everybody's going to be surprised that this series is probably going to go longer than expected. I'm not going to say who's going to win it yet, but I think it's going to go longer than people are going to expect it to be.
Crazy how with that season with the Red Wings and their wins, and then the highest scoring team in the Penguins that same season, and then eliminated by the Florida Panthers in the conference final. This is going to be the first time that the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins face in the playoffs since 1996. What happened that year? I don't know. Bill Lindsay scores a game-winning goal against the Boston Bruins while he's falling forward and just chips it 5-hole to get the game winner for the Panthers and have them advance. Still the most iconic goal in the team's history based on degree of difficulty, if we want to say, and moment. And it's funny, I just walked by Bill Lindsay right before going down for the presser. So great to see it all coming full circle there. But let's talk a little bit about when the series is supposed to start and what we can expect. So the Boston Celtics share an arena, obviously, with the Bruins. Game 1 for them is Saturday against the Atlanta Hawks.
Yep.
Game 2 is Tuesday. Yep. So we can expect a Monday and a Wednesday. Here's the thing with the Celtics series. Game 1 and 2 is a 2-day gap and then between games 2 and 3 is another 2 or 3 day gap, one of the two. So we could very well see one of a few things. Games 1 will be on Monday, 2 will be on Wednesday. Game 3, I'm 99.9% sure is going to be next Friday here at FLA Live Arena. They could either do one of two things. Either have the Florida Panthers on a back-to-back Friday, Saturday, or
there's a concert here Saturday. Saturday game.
Oh, there's George Richards just told me there's a concert here on Saturday. So no concert here on Saturday. Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
So it could be Friday and Sunday, and then with the Boston Celtics having a game 5 on Tuesday, the Panthers could have 2 days off between games 4 and 5, and then do the whole rotation. And game 7 of that Celtics series would be on that Saturday in TD Garden. So chances are game 1 on the Monday, 2 on the Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday, if you guys are following. So only 1-2 day gap in between. So a little bit of a different, a little bit of a scheduling guess as far as that. But I believe I haven't gotten an email yet from Panthers PR. Of course, not all the games have gone final, but Colorado hasn't clinched the Central Division yet. They play tomorrow, game 82. So we might not know the full schedule even until tomorrow night, even.
Yeah. So I will say this, it's really nice that Florida doesn't have to play a back-to-back in the playoffs, or it looks like they won't, because I can't tell you how annoying that is. And it seems like Florida's the only team the last couple of seasons that have played back-to-backs. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody who's listening or watches, you guys can correct me. That's fine. But I just feel like just for scheduling purposes, the league made Florida play back-to-back games. And over the last couple times that they made the playoffs, it hasn't benefited them, to be honest. And how can you play playoff hockey on a back-to-back? Regular season's fine. Name me another sport besides baseball that you play back-to-back for playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
With a 60-minute game too, where it's on the fly as well, that's difficult to log that many minutes if you're doing it. So actually, I looked up on StubHub what the concert would be here at FLA Live Arena. It's Juan Luis Guerra is the concert here at FLA Live Arena on Saturday night. So no.
So the
go
ice
ahead.
is going to be choppy on Sunday.
I mean, they keep it at a certain temperature during non-game days and all that stuff. So I'm not necessarily worried about I'm not going to be worried about the ice conditions on how they're going to look when the Panthers do take the ice again. So again, hope you guys were able to stay with me as I list the days of possibly for how the schedule outlook could be. At FLA Live Arena on April 26th, there's All Elite Wrestling, but that would be a possible Game 5 on the road. So no arena conflict for the Florida Panthers here. So only that. And so putting 2 and 2 together, putting the puzzle and all that stuff. But Nick, we know who the matchup is. We know we are familiar with this Boston Bruins team. Obviously, of course, no matter what happens, the Panthers have a tough challenge ahead of them. And even if they do end up winning this series, which I'll give my prediction for Monday's show, they're going to have to go up against, even if they beat Boston, they're going to have to go against a team that has broken a playoff drought in the Toronto Maple Leafs, or a team that's going to go to their that's trying to make their 4th straight Stanley Cup final. So it is not going to be an easy task at all to even get past the Boston Bruins in this one. So big hill to climb, my friend.
Definitely. And I have 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
One, do you really think Toronto's going to make it out of the first round this season, or this postseason?
I think they're healthier as far as their skaters. Not goaltending, obviously, with Matt Murray. I mean, Samsonov's been great at times here and there, but of course, he's not Vasilevsky. And I just get, with the Tampa Bay Lightning, I get 2014 Miami Heat vibes, that they're limping. They might not take the regular season as seriously, and it might catch up to them in this one. So I think this could be the year. I really do. It just depends what kind of Vasilevsky we see.
So I think it's interesting that you said that they go in, they're not taking the regular season seriously. How crazy is it that Florida ended up 4 points behind them? And they were legit, 10, 15, almost 20 points behind, by January or February.
Going into tonight, their last 10 was 3-7-0 for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, so to me, I think they're playing dead right now. And when the playoffs come, when they start against Toronto, we're going to see a different team. You're going to see Vasilevsky locked in, and I don't see him getting out. So that was my second question: is do you think they're playing dead right now? Because I do.
I don't know if dead is the. I wish I could use a better word, but I just think conserving energy is a better way of using it. I guess you could relate that to dead as well, but of course we know what kind of marathon the Stanley Cup season, the NHL regular season is, and then the Stanley Cup playoffs is its own. But of course, I live in Central Florida where it's Lightning territory over there, and some of them even say that even if they get eliminated in round one, that this could be a good reset for them to be even better the next season. That's at least from the Lightning fans that I've spoken to as well. So it's gonna be fun. My friend, are you ready for the best part of the year?
Of course. I'm just glad we're a part of it. I mean, for most of these shows that we did this year, we were like, ooh, gloomy. I don't know if this is going to happen. The way they're playing right now, hell no. But no, I'm happy to be a part of it because now it's all house money. That's all this is. Last year, no, they needed to prove something. They needed to win everything. But now, let's throw everything out the window and let's make a statement and have some fun.
Before we sign off here, Jonathan Toews scored for the Chicago Blackhawks in his final game as a Blackhawks. Right now, it's 4-4. Blackhawks Flyers. It looks like that's going to head into overtime. And then one other one right before we do is the Colorado Avalanche won and the Dallas Stars won. So Colorado would have one more game tomorrow to try to win the division. And Western Conference. Vegas is still battling it out for the Pacific Division. It's 0-0 against the Kraken, and Kings and Ducks tied at 1, and Oilers are putting the pressure on for the division title. So that is a little bit of an update on the division races across the league. So it's crazy how it came down to game 81/82 for some of these clinching scenarios. Only one was locked in, which was Maple Leafs Lightning for a while. So, Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. The next time we talk, we will be previewing a game 3 for the Florida Panthers versus the Boston Bruins. So tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Armando, thanks for having me on. Thanks for having me on all season. Can't wait to do the post season with you as well. Everybody, you can follow me on Twitter at Prudentia0. Like I said, it's house money, guys. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Great way to end it. So thank you, Nick, and I will see you next week, my friend.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to Locked On Game to Game. Every moment, every top performance. Locked On Game to Game brings you the biggest moments from the National Hockey League. Follow Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.